Hi, everyone. I'm William Kress, or you can call me Bill during the interview. I'm the president and co founder of Kress Communications. I'm here today with Citybiz, and we're going to be interviewing Rafael Aquino. He's the CEO and co founder of Affinity Management Services. Good afternoon. How are you doing today, Rafael?
Hey, good afternoon, Bill. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on today.
Doing well. We're both in Miami, I understand, correct?
Yeah, enjoying the weather.
Well, maybe that's a good place to start. Can you please give me an overview of Affinity Management Services and how it started, if it started here in Miami? So let's have an overview.
Sure. So, Affinity Management Services, we're a company located here in Doral, Florida. We service the Tri-County area, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. We're a boutique operation. Our specific space that we're in is managing condo and homeowner association. So we're basically a community association management company. My business partner and I started the business close to 15 years ago. Like most in this industry, we kind of fell into it. We both FIU graduates, go Panthers. And I graduated actually from electrical engineering. When I graduated, Pedro and I decided we were looking for our own kind of careers of what we had graduated. I did engineering, he did marketing and so forth. And we just didn't find what we were looking for. And at that time, we saw an opportunity in the real estate market to start off with land development. We actually started our first business when we were straight out of college. And we were putting land together in what's known now as Wynwood and Allapattah. So it went pretty well for us for the first 4 to 5 years. And then during that time, our goal was to start developing properties. And we were saving every dollar we could, living at home, doing what we could. We thought we were doing the right thing. And we noticed that there was an opportunity also in management. And we thought, well, we'll develop a building and then we'll do the condo management of that building. So we started Affinity Management, and now we're in the midst of 2008. So as you can imagine, the market crashed. We already had purchased 2 pieces of land, and we came from very humble beginnings, so we didn't have the holding power that we needed to. But fortunately enough for us, we did start Affinity. And since then, we've been doing this now for 15 years. We have close to 130 employees, and we manage about 14,000 units throughout the Tri-County area.
Wow. I mean, coming from an electrical engineering background, um, property management must be pretty electrifying stuff. Sorry about that. Now, Affinity, though, I mean, where did the name Affinity come from? If you could share that with us.
Sure. So the name resonated for us, which is especially with managing associations, which is basically, having harmony amongst not only its owners, but its residents. For us also, it was important of having that harmony with our team members. Because here at Affinity, we're strong believers in our team, in our culture, and our people, especially in our industry, which there are some challenges like most industries. But ultimately, our people are what drive us. And because of our people is what allows us to drive our communities to do what's right for them and give them that sense of ownership. Most people here in South Florida, their home is really everything that they have. So we have a big responsibility to our clients to make sure that we're upholding those property values, that there's a good, protecting the communities and doing what's right, because our clients, they actually don't get paid for what they do. So we have a large responsibility on their behalf to do what's right for them.
Yeah, and their homes are everything they have, which is a big concern this time of year. We're in the middle of hurricane season. Well, we're not in the middle. We've just finished the first month. But everyone wants to know now how they can prepare. I mean, we get those lists from the cities and the counties and whatnot. But can you share a few tips specific to homeowners here in South Florida from your perspective?
Sure, I'll be happy to do so. So I'm kind of going to go over kind of 5 quick little points. As you stated, each county has their own preparation. They're very well put together. There's a ton of information, but just want to give kind of like a 30,000 foot. Number one is it's really to document the current situation of your property, whether you're in a homeowners association or a condo association, is to really document where do you currently stand. In most cases, you want to do that now, and then you want to do it also pre-storm so that you have that time stamped and dated. So when you have a claim, you can easily show to your adjusters of what the current conditions were prior to the storm being hit. Next is knowing what are the, not only just knowing what the conditions are, but is there anything that you need to do that can be proactive to avoid, water coming in, or do you have, in many cases, especially in condo associations, you have contractors coming on the roof all the time. Many times they're leaving things up there. So just taking a peek at your roof, at its conditions. Is there anything that you need to remove off the roof that can be of debris that could fly should a hurricane come? Next thing that's very important is also making sure that you have a certified insurance policy. Making sure that you have this actual policy in hand. I can't tell you how many times you'll hurricane hits, and let's say we take this new association on, and we're asking where are the copies of the policies, and they don't have the copy of the policy in hand. So trying to get that after a storm hit is going to be very difficult because that agency or the person who wrote the policy, it's going to be impossible to get. So making sure that basics that you actually have a copy, not just digitized. An ideal would be to have a certified actual policy. Next is to make sure that if you have a hurricane plan, which if you're in a condo association and a homeowner association, you definitely should, is not just having a plan, but also going through the plan and practicing that actual plan. The peak of hurricane season is coming in September. So this is when the storms typically start to pick up. So making sure that you're practicing the plan. What are the steps that you're going to follow? Do you have all the items that are necessary within that plan? How are things going to roll out? That way your team and you are all on the same page when the hurricane does come, and you know what steps each person is going to be responsible for. And lastly is communicating with your residents, whether you're in a homeowner association or a condo association, of what steps will be followed. So for instance, in homeowner association, it's going to be very common that the gates are going to be left open. So there's, some people get concerned because of security, but we need to provide that egress and ingress for ambulances and so forth to be able to come in. Also, we don't want damages to those poles. In condo associations, it can be a little bit more complicated because elevators are usually shut down. Depending where your building is located, in some instances, they may be a mandatory evacuation. So if you're a manager or if you're a self-managed community, you want to make sure that you're notifying your residents of what steps you're going to take within the execution of that hurricane plan. So that way everyone is on the same page and they know what to expect when an emergency hits.
Well, thank you for those tips, Rafael. Let's chat a little bit about the recent condo legislation. Can you share in plain terms what's the new legislation requirements affecting HOAs and how is it impacting residents?
Sure, Bill. I'll be happy to do that. So legislation was recently passed in June, signed by the governor. And what the legislation is now requiring, it's going to be any condo association that's over 3 stories high, that's older than 25 years if you're within 3 miles of the coastal line, or 30 years if you're 3 miles further. They're going to require what's called a phase 1 and a phase 2 inspection. That phase 1 and phase 2 inspection is going to need to be done by either an architect or an engineer. Based on my experience and with the tragedy that occurred at Champlain and Surfside, most associations, unfortunately, are probably not going to pass the phase 1, and they're going to move into what's called a phase 2, which has more destructive testing, and it's going to be a bit more of a higher cost. Further, there was also legislation passed that there would be now what's called mandatory reserves for, again, buildings that are higher than 3 stories. And these mandatory reserves will be for particular items that the statute now outlines, such as roofs, structural components, plumbing, and so forth, life safety equipment, where by December 31st, 2024, a mandatory structural reserve integrity reserve study is going to need to be done. In that reserve integrity report, it's going to outline for the association how much they need to have. So how does this impact condo associations? Where unfortunately, many associations in South Florida, especially those condo associations, don't have reserves. So they're going to find themselves in a very difficult situation because if you haven't put any reserves away, you may find yourself in a situation where in 2 years you're going to need to be reserving two, three, four, $5 million, really depending on the size of your community. So the legislation was passed really to protect many associations. Unfortunately, many associations have kicked the can down the road by voting down reserves. However, now unfortunately those that don't have reserves are going to have to pay or start setting the money aside for these reserves.
Do you think there's any other reforms in the near future regarding condo safety that we should be we should be keeping an eye out for?
So right now, what I think is what a lot of people are most likely are really hoping for is that there's going to be some change with regards to the time frame. I personally do. It's my opinion that I do believe that there are going to be changes to the legislation itself because there are still a lot of things that aren't clear. Again, this was pretty much passed within a 24-hour period. It happened during a special session. But ultimately, what we're advising our clients, and we do a lot of webinars and a lot of educational events, is you know, we don't know what can happen. You have 2 years to start preparing, but don't wait to start doing what you need to do. Because if certain things aren't change, if certain things do not change, then you're going to find yourself in a very difficult situation because engineers are limited. The amount of contractors are going to be limited because many contractors are being called out right now. Costs are skyrocketing. So our advice is, will there be change? Possibly. But now is not the time to procrastinate. Now is the time to really start preparing.
Well, thanks, Rafael. You've given us a lot to think about. I'd like to move into budget season, which is quickly approaching. Do you have any tips for HOAs that are preparing now for the budget season?
This starts to become the third and fourth quarter are the busiest season for community association managers. So some of the tips that I have is start contacting your vendors if you haven't done so already, especially for those self-managed communities. Costs are going up everywhere, and it's not just because of inflation. So Amendment 2 was passed just about 2 years ago where minimum wage is now being pushed up. So that's impacting many vendors within our industry. Some of the vendors are landscaping vendors, security vendors, staffing such as front desk, your maintenance and janitorial. So you want to understand next year what the minimum wage increase is going up to. Are you budgeted for that? And then start having conversations with your contractors as well of what potential increases they're seeing. I mean, we've seen a significant amount of increases already this year. Not just from the vendors that I spoke to, from pretty much every angle, because just like every other industry, we're getting hit by inflation. But it's really having those conversations. Next, for those associations that don't have reserves, whether you're an HOA or a condo, is to start setting monies aside. I mean, condos, you're going to really have no choice if you're over 3 stories. With the new legislation, you're going to be required to put away money for your reserves, especially for those statutory required reserves. But start communicating with your residents of what these impacts are going to look like. It's not just companies that are being hit with it. Obviously, the homeowners are also being hit with inflation, with the increase in gas and so forth. So you want to start communicating with your residents early on of what they can expect to pay next year. Some associations are having to amend their budgets now because they don't have sufficient funds to be able to keep up with the inflation that we've seen lately. So more than anything is communicate with your residents, talk to your partners if there's any other creative ways in potentially either reducing costs or what could be done if your association can't maintain these expenses. But ultimately, as board members, you have a fiduciary duty to communicate with your residents, let them know of what's to come and what they should expect or what's coming to them.
Okay. What are some ways that Affinity Management Services, and you've covered a lot, what are the ways that Affinity can help HOAs that may be struggling with budget season prep? If you want to expand on that and how they can better adhere to the recent condo legislation.
Sure. So first, I want to talk to those associations that possibly don't have a management company. As an organization, we're here to be able to assist you in any way that we can. We do have budget tools that we could provide you with, so feel free to reach out to us and we can provide you with some tips or some checklist of what you should be looking for when preparing your budget, and also what potential costs that we've seen from our side, from our baseline, that you should be preparing. If you do have a management company, I would say make sure that you're working closely with your management company and understanding of what the impacts or what potential increases you're going to see next year. Again, one of the biggest impacts I don't think anyone could have ever planned for last year was the increase in insurance costs. So, what are you doing as an association to either mitigate or prepare yourselves for next year? Because there are expected for insurance costs to continue to increase. But overall, as an organization, we do a lot of educating, a lot of webinars, a lot of seminars. So I would say reach out to us. We could put you on our list. And when we do webinars or trainings, you can be part of that. Or you can reach out to us and we can provide you with some basic templates on how to prepare budgets, on what you should be looking for potential increases, and also what ways that you could potentially save some money as well. Because there are many ways that we've been able to help our clients save money even during these inflationary times.
All right, Rafael P. Aquino, CEO and co-founder of Affinity Management Services. After listening to you today, Rafael, I think everybody wants to move into your building.
I'm sorry, Bill. I missed that. I missed the last question. I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Well, it wasn't a question. It was just that I think I want to move into your building after hearing how everything you've had to share with us. Yeah, yeah. All righty. Well, thank you so much, Rafael. Anything else you'd like to add here at the end?
No, sure. Well, thank you, Bill, so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. If anyone wants to reach us, they can visit our website, managedbyaffinity.com, or you can also call us at 305-325-4243.
That's a great way to end it. And I thank you again and everyone signing off from Citybiz. I'm Bill Kress. Have a great day.